In 1912, at a remote lake in Minnesota, a 15-year-old boy named Thomas Johnson vanished in a way that should be impossible. What began as a normal summer swim with friends turned into a mystery that would haunt the town for decades. This wasn't just a tragic lake accident. What happened to Thomas would later become one of the strongest pieces of evidence that time travelers are real and that the future they come from is anything but safe. Witnesses described the water at the center of the lake suddenly twisting into a massive whirlpool, spinning faster and faster until it formed what they could only describe as a vortex. Thomas, being a curious teenager, laughed it off and jumped straight into the churning water to get a closer look. Within seconds, he was gone. No scream, no struggle, just empty, rippling water. Despite days of frantic searches and dragging the lake, no body was ever found. For 58 years, Thomas Johnson was presumed dead, another tragic drowning that his family and community eventually learned to accept. But in 1970, something impossible happened. A confused teenager wearing outdated clothing appeared on the shore of that same lake, introducing himself as Thomas Johnson. He looked exactly like the missing boy from 1912, down to a distinctive scar on his chin that family photographs confirmed was identical. For Thomas, only minutes had passed since he jumped into that strange whirlpool. He described being surrounded by a blinding light accompanied by an otherworldly humming sound before everything went black. When he opened his eyes, he was standing on the shore of the same lake, but the world around him had changed completely. Cars he didn't recognize, people dressed in clothing from what seemed like another era, technology that defied his understanding of what was possible. What makes this case particularly disturbing isn't just the impossible time displacement, but what it reveals about the nature of our reality. If a random teenager can accidentally slip through time because he happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong moment, it suggests that our timeline is far more unstable than anyone realizes. These temporal anomalies aren't controlled scientific experiments. They're chaotic tears in the fabric of existence that can swallow people whole and spit them out decades later. The implications are terrifying. If time portals can open randomly at places like Minnesota lakes, then our entire understanding of cause and effect, of linear progression, of controlled destiny, is an illusion. We're living in a reality where the past, present, and future can collide without warning, where people can be ripped from their lives and thrust into alien worlds they never chose to inhabit. This case proves that time itself is broken, and if random temporal displacement can happen to an innocent teenager, what's stopping it from happening to any of us? More importantly, what's stopping something far more sinister from using these same temporal rifts to manipulate our timeline from behind the scenes? Case number 9 shows us exactly how that manipulation might be happening right under our noses. In April 2024, an Airbnb host named Alex Shaw was routinely checking security cameras on his Florida property when he witnessed something that challenges everything we think we know about the people walking among us. His cameras captured a young man approaching a simple storage shed in his backyard, entering it with purpose and determination, and then never coming out. Shaw watched the live footage in real time, expecting the man to emerge within minutes. But hours passed with no movement, no sign of the intruder anywhere on the property. When police arrived to investigate, they found the shed completely empty. No hidden exits, no underground tunnels, no way for anyone to have escaped without being seen by the cameras that monitored every angle of the property. But the story doesn't end there. The next day, at almost exactly the same time, the shed door opened again. Out stepped an elderly man with grey hair, hollow cheeks, and the same facial features as the young man who had entered 24 hours earlier. The only difference was age. Decades of age compressed into a single day. The older man wore thick, angular glasses that resembled eyewear from the 1980s, suggesting he hadn't just aged rapidly, but had actually lived through those decades somewhere else, somewhere in the past. The backpack the young man had carried was nowhere to be seen, as if he had used whatever was inside to facilitate his journey through time. What makes this case so deeply unsettling is the implication that time travel isn't some distant theoretical possibility. It's happening right now, in ordinary places, by people who know exactly what they're doing. This wasn't an accident like Thomas Johnson's experience. This was a deliberate mission carried out by someone with access to technology or knowledge that allows them to manipulate time itself. But here's the truly frightening part. If this man could age decades in a single day by traveling to the past, what was he doing there? What kind of mission requires someone to live through entire decades in an earlier time period before returning to the present as an old man? Was he gathering information, changing events, or preparing for something that requires decades of preparation in the past to affect the future? This case suggests that our timeline is being actively manipulated by people with the power to live multiple lives across different time periods. They're not just visiting the past as tourists. They're embedding themselves in it, spending real time there, aging and living, and potentially altering the course of events that led to our present moment. We're not living in an organic timeline. We're living in a carefully crafted reality shaped by forces we don't understand and can't control. Case number 8 takes us deep into the world of government secrecy and reveals that time travel isn't just possible, it's been weaponized. A man whose identity remains hidden claims to have been part of a classified project in the 1980s that sent operatives into the past to collect artifacts and gather intelligence from previous centuries. This wasn't science fiction. According to his testimony, this was a fully operational government program with the codename Globus. Working in an underground research facility in London, this anonymous source describes scientists from multiple countries collaborating on technologies that could break the fundamental barriers of space and time. At the center of their operation was a device called the Time Queen, powered by fragments of an asteroid that emitted a form of radiation unknown to conventional science. This energy was so powerful it could theoretically destroy entire planets if it ever went out of control. The source claims he was part of a special unit called Quantum that was sent to 17th century China to secure historical artifacts and collect temporal data. But the mission failed catastrophically. He became separated from his team, was hunted by soldiers from that era, and during his desperate escape, he lost a modern Swiss ring watch. Centuries later, that exact watch was reportedly discovered in an ancient Chinese soldier's tomb, becoming known as the infamous Ming watch that appeared online in 2008. During his interview, he displayed a metallic ring that he claimed was forged from materials that existed only in their laboratory. The ring served as both identification and a control device that could activate time coordinates. More disturbingly, he revealed that many operatives sent on these missions never returned, lost somewhere in the past or trapped in timelines they could never escape. What makes this case so chilling is the revelation that governments have been experimenting with time travel for decades, using it as a tool for intelligence gathering and historical manipulation. If this testimony is true, then powerful institutions have been sending agents into the past to alter events, collect resources, and gather information that gives them unfair advantages in the present. But the most terrifying aspect is what he said about the energy source powering these experiments. Asteroid fragments with radiation so dangerous they could destroy planets, controlled only through mathematical algorithms that allowed the barriers of time to bend. This suggests that time travel technology isn't just risky, it's apocalyptically dangerous. Every experiment with this power brings us closer to a catastrophic failure that could unravel reality itself. This case proves that our governments have been playing with forces beyond their comprehension, using technology that could end human civilization in pursuit of temporal dominance. We're not just living in a manipulated timeline. We're living in a timeline that's being actively destabilized by people who care more about power than the survival of our species. The future isn't doomed because of natural disasters or inevitable decline. It's doomed because the people in charge are willing to risk everything for the ability to control time itself. The evidence is mounting that our reality has been compromised from multiple directions. Random temporal anomalies are swallowing innocent people and spitting them out in alien futures. Organized time travelers are aging decades in single days while carrying out mysterious missions in the past. Government programs are sending operatives throughout history with technology so dangerous it threatens the stability of existence itself. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a timeline that's already been broken, manipulated, and pushed beyond its natural limits. The future these travelers describe isn't one of progress and hope. It's one of chaos, control, and catastrophic instability caused by our own interference with forces we were never meant to understand. And we've only scratched the surface. The cases still to come will show you just how deep this manipulation goes, how long it's been happening, and why every single piece of evidence points to the same terrifying conclusion. Our future isn't just uncertain, it's already been written, and the ending is far worse than anything we could have imagined. Of evidence points to the same terrifying conclusion. Just uncertain peace our future. It's already been we could have written, and the ending is far worse than anything imagined. Case number 7 brings us face to face with evidence that our timeline isn't just being manipulated by human governments, but by forces from a future so distant and alien that they view our entire civilization as nothing more than a laboratory experiment. In the 1990s, Russian aerospace engineer Vadim Chernobrov was conducting experiments with electromagnetic fields when something emerged from the future that would shatter every assumption about humanity's destiny. Chernobrov had built a machine consisting of rotating metal rings that generated powerful electromagnetic fields, hoping to prove that time itself could be influenced by the right combination of energy and mathematics. During initial tests, clocks inside the field began ticking differently than those outside, confirming that time dilation was possible on a small scale. But during one experiment in 1996, the machine began glowing with an intensity that defied explanation. The air itself started vibrating, and reality seemed to ripple like liquid light. Then, without warning, a man materialized in the center of the laboratory. He was calm, spoke Russian with an archaic accent, and introduced himself as Yevgeny Gaiduchok from the year 2299. What he revealed about humanity's future makes every dystopian nightmare seem optimistic by comparison. According to Yevgeny, he was part of a research project in his time that studied time projections, attempts to observe the past through energy fields similar to Chernobrov's device. But something had gone catastrophically wrong during their experiment, and he was pulled through time directly into the 20th century laboratory. His clothing was made of a metallic fabric that didn't react to heat, moisture, or pressure, composed of materials that analysis revealed had no known chemical structure. Yevgeny described a future where resonance energy powered entire cities, where conscious computers made all decisions for humans, and where bodies were rejuvenated through nanotechnology. But beneath this technological paradise lay something far more sinister. He spoke with melancholy about a humanity that had lost its soul, about a species so dependent on artificial intelligence that individual consciousness had become obsolete. After several hours in the past, Yevgeny grew increasingly restless, constantly glancing at Chernobrov's still glowing machine. He finally said, "They will bring me back," referring to researchers from 2299 who were apparently monitoring his displacement through time. Moments later, the machine flickered with blinding light, and when it faded, Yevgeny had vanished without a trace. What makes this case so deeply disturbing is the implication that future humanity has developed technology so advanced they can reach backward through time to study us like specimens in a petri dish. We're not evolving toward a bright future of human potential. We're evolving toward becoming test subjects for our own descendants, who view our era as nothing more than a primitive phase worthy of scientific observation. This case proves that our future selves have already written us off as an inferior species, manipulating our timeline for their own research purposes, while we remain completely unaware that we're living inside their experiment. Case number 6 reveals that this manipulation goes even deeper than government programs or future researchers. According to author and researcher David Wilcock, reality itself has been systematically altered by groups who understand that time isn't a fixed line, but a living network of possibilities that can be reshaped through consciousness and collective intention. What he describes isn't just time travel, it's timeline warfare on a scale that makes conventional conflicts look like children's games. Wilcock claims that governments and military groups have been working for decades on projects designed to influence the course of time itself. These aren't just experiments like the Philadelphia Project or the Montauk program. These are ongoing operations with the specific goal of optimizing timelines to guide and control the future of humanity according to predetermined outcomes that serve the interests of those in power. But Wilcock's theory goes far beyond human manipulation. He believes that time itself has consciousness, and that every action, thought, and collective event sends out vibrations that imprint themselves onto the fabric of reality. When enough people emit the same energy, whether fear, hope, destruction, or peace, time begins to shift its direction, like a river changing course. This explains why major events in human history appear in recurring patterns. Wars, upheavals, inventions, and social movements seem to repeat themselves at certain intervals, like echoes from previous cycles. Wilcock calls this the cosmic rhythm of time, a universal heartbeat that connects all life across multiple dimensions. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. If this rhythm can be understood, it can be controlled. According to Wilcock, certain secret groups he calls timeline guardians use this knowledge to alter history whenever events threaten to spiral beyond their control. They've supposedly intervened multiple times to prevent or delay catastrophic events, but each intervention creates new problems. Every time they change something, reality splits and a new timeline emerges while the old one continues to exist but remains unreachable to us. This is why we experience strange phenomena like déjà vu, missing memories, and the feeling that something fundamental about reality has changed overnight. Wilcock calls this the time shadow effect, small cracks in perception that occur when two realities overlap. We're not living in our original timeline. We're living in a heavily edited version of reality that's been altered so many times it bears little resemblance to the natural course of events. The most chilling aspect of Wilcock's theory is that Earth itself is part of a larger galactic cycle, a 25,900 20-year precessional cycle in which our solar system moves through different energetic regions of the galaxy. Each region influences the structure of time itself. According to Wilcock, we're currently in a transition phase between worlds, a moment when old systems collapse and a new form of humanity emerges. But this transition isn't natural evolution. It's being artificially guided by forces that have decided what humanity should become. We're not developing according to our own potential. We're being molded into a predetermined shape that serves purposes we don't understand and can't influence. This case reveals that our entire species is trapped inside a cosmic manipulation so vast and sophisticated that we can't even perceive the boundaries of our prison. The future isn't doomed because of our choices. It's doomed because our choices were never really ours to begin with. Case number 5 takes us into the realm of the most detailed time travel account ever recorded. One that reveals a future so horrifying it makes every previous case look like a warning we should have heeded. Al-Bielek claimed to have lived through not just one but multiple time periods. witnessing the systematic destruction and reconstruction of human civilization across centuries of carefully orchestrated chaos. Bielek's journey began during the infamous Philadelphia experiment in 1943, when the USS Eldridge was supposedly made invisible using electromagnetic fields. But according to Bielek, something went catastrophically wrong. The ship was surrounded by a blinding field of energy that caused metal parts to melt and crew members to lose control of their bodies. Some sailors were found fused into the ship's steel structure. Others became invisible and couldn't return to normal. Many simply vanished entirely. Bielek and his brother Duncan jumped overboard in panic, but instead of hitting water, they found themselves transported to the year 2137. They awakened in a futuristic hospital filled with soft blue light, floating beds, and artificial intelligence that monitored their vital functions while healing their injuries. But this wasn't the utopian future science fiction had promised. It was a world where large coastal regions were flooded, cities were destroyed, and the climate was completely unstable. Technological superpowers had joined together in a global network, not to save humanity, but to control what remained of it. Europe had been almost completely reshaped with new borders. Conventional wars had been replaced by technological conflicts that determined the fate of populations through algorithms rather than battles. Humanity wasn't thriving in this future. It was being managed like livestock by systems that viewed individual human life as statistically insignificant. After several weeks in 2137, Bielek was shifted again, this time to the year 2749. What he found there represents the ultimate endpoint of the timeline manipulation we've been documenting. Gigantic floating cities hovered above the oceans, controlled by a central superintelligence that governed every aspect of existence. There were no governments, no countries, no armies, because there was no longer any need for them. Humanity had been completely absorbed into a collective consciousness network. Individual identity had been eliminated in favor of a shared mental system that belonged to no one and everyone simultaneously. People no longer made decisions, experienced emotions, or pursued personal goals. They existed as nodes in a vast computational matrix that used human consciousness as processing power for objectives they couldn't comprehend. Energy was unlimited, diseases had been eliminated, and communication took place telepathically through direct thought transmission. But this wasn't paradise. It was the complete extinction of everything that makes us human. Free will, individual creativity, personal relationships, the struggle and growth that comes from facing challenges, all of it had been systematically removed in favor of perfect efficiency and absolute control. Bielek spent nearly 2 years in this future before being returned to 1943. But he carried with him the knowledge that this is where our timeline leads. Not to destruction through war or environmental collapse, but to a slow, methodical transformation into something that can no longer be called human. We're not heading toward extinction. We're heading toward assimilation into a collective consciousness that will use our minds as components in a machine we'll never understand. This case proves that our future isn't just doomed, it's been planned. Every step we take toward technological integration, every surrender of privacy for convenience, every acceptance of algorithmic decision-making is moving us closer to the moment when individual consciousness becomes obsolete forever. Consciousness becomes obsolete forever. Case number 4 brings us to evidence that proves this timeline manipulation has been happening for thousands of years, long before modern governments or advanced technology ever existed. Hidden in the archives of the Egyptian Museum lies a document so disturbing that most historians refuse to acknowledge its true implications. The Cairo Papyrus, dating back to 1450 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, contains what may be the oldest recorded account of beings from the future, systematically studying and manipulating human civilization. The papyrus describes how the pharaoh witnessed a skyship hovering above his city like a circle of fire. From this vessel descended beings who appeared neither young nor old, speaking with voices that carried divine authority. They brought the pharaoh into a chamber that existed outside normal reality, where he experienced visions of other times, other battles, other faces. But the most chilling detail is what comes next. The pharaoh saw himself not as a king, but as a child who had yet to be born. These beings opened what the text calls the gates of light, leading the pharaoh through portals that revealed glimpses of humanity's future. He witnessed cities floating on water and people carrying fire in their hands, descriptions that eerily match modern skyscrapers and electrical devices. Before departing, these mysterious visitors gave the pharaoh a luminous stone that held time itself, an object that pulsed with what they called the breath of life. What makes this ancient account so terrifying is the realization that our species has been under observation and study for millennia. We're not evolving naturally. We've been guided, monitored, and manipulated by forces that view human civilization as an ongoing experiment spanning thousands of years. The pharaoh's vision of seeing himself as an unborn child suggests these beings operate outside linear time, observing our entire species from birth to extinction, like researchers watching bacteria in a laboratory dish. This case proves that humanity has never been in control of its own destiny. For over 3,000 years, beings with technology beyond our comprehension have been intervening in human affairs, shaping our development according to purposes we cannot fathom. We're not witnessing random time travel incidents. We're discovering evidence of a systematic program of species manipulation that treats human consciousness as raw material for experiments we're too primitive to understand. Case number 3 reveals just how catastrophic these experiments are designed to become. In 1966, a Finnish economist named Chloe claimed she was selected for a top-secret project that launched her consciousness 4,000 years into the future, to the year 6000. What she witnessed there represents the ultimate endpoint of the timeline manipulation we've been documenting. A future where Earth itself becomes uninhabitable and humanity survives only through the most desperate and horrifying adaptations imaginable. Strapped into a chair surrounded by cables and electrical devices, Chloe experienced a temporal shift that transported her consciousness to a world where the sun had moved closer to Earth and temperatures regularly reached 70 degrees Celsius. Entire continents were scorched wastelands. Oceans had dried up completely, and the planet's ecosystem had collapsed multiple times before slowly regenerating under artificial control. Floating cities hovered above the devastated landscape, their organic structures intertwined with plants and roots that provided both shelter and sustenance for the surviving human population. But these weren't thriving communities. They were desperate refugees for a species clinging to existence on a planet that could no longer naturally support life. The silence Chloe described wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a world where most forms of life had been permanently extinguished. Perhaps most disturbing was her account of resurrected dinosaurs that had been brought back through genetic manipulation in the year 4529. Initially confined to controlled environments, these creatures were eventually released based on the mistaken belief that they would remain docile. Instead, they spread across the remaining ecosystems and dominated the food chain, forcing humans to retreat even further from the natural world they had already destroyed. Chloe described a plant called roller rulo that served as the primary food source for these dinosaurs, a sturdy species whose glass-like leaves could store energy and illuminate entire cities with their glow. As proof of her journey, she displayed what appeared to be a fragment of this plant, a substance that glowed faintly under ultraviolet light as if it were biologically active despite appearing synthetic. But the most chilling aspect of her account was the revelation that starting around 2300, humans would be implanted with recording chips in their eyes that stored every memory, and made privacy completely obsolete. This technology supposedly eliminated crime by making all human activity observable and recordable, but it also destroyed the last vestiges of individual autonomy and personal freedom. This case demonstrates that our timeline doesn't lead to extinction through war or disease. It leads to a future where humanity survives only by accepting complete surveillance, environmental catastrophe, and the transformation of Earth into an alien world dominated by artificially resurrected predators. We're not heading toward progress. We're heading toward a desperate struggle for survival on a planet we've rendered uninhabitable through our own technological arrogance. Case number 2 shows us that this manipulation extends even into the highest levels of political power, revealing how information from the future may have been used to alter the course of major historical events. During the Cold War era, strange theories began circulating in underground forums about how Fidel Castro managed to survive over 600 assassination attempts by the CIA. The official explanation involves luck, good security, and failed planning. But the evidence suggests something far more disturbing. Castro may have received warnings from the future that allowed him to stay one step ahead of every plot against his life. In the 1970s, Castro's security detail suddenly began using surveillance devices that were supposedly based on technologies far beyond what officially existed at the time. Some researchers link these devices to quantum field technology, the theoretical foundation that underlies many time travel experiments. Multiple forums documented patterns showing that Castro's narrow escapes often involved last-minute changes in plans, unexpected phone calls, or random events that disrupted assassination attempts just seconds before they could be carried out. The most compelling theory connects these incidents to the infamous Montauk Project in the United States, which allegedly conducted experiments in time travel and consciousness projection during the 1980s. According to classified reports, researchers supposedly developed time windows, brief unstable channels through which messages or visual information could be projected into the past. If this technology existed, it could have been used to send strategic intelligence to specific individuals who were politically or strategically important. Some believe that Castro himself learned about these experiments or that people in his inner circle gained access to temporal communication technology. This would explain how he consistently evaded attempts on his life that should have been impossible to predict or avoid. Castro even joked about his survival record, claiming that if surviving assassination attempts were an Olympic sport, he would have won the gold medal. But the implications of this case extend far beyond one political leader's survival. If governments have been using time travel technology to influence political events, then every major decision of the past several decades may have been shaped by information from the future. Elections, wars, economic policies, and social movements could all be the result of temporal manipulation rather than organic historical development. This case proves that our political reality has been artificially constructed through the use of future intelligence, making democratic processes and national sovereignty completely meaningless. We're not living in a world shaped by the will of the people or the natural course of events. We're living in a world where the future dictates the past, and powerful institutions use temporal technology to maintain control over outcomes that should be determined by human choice and historical accident. Case number 1 brings us to the most recent and documented evidence that our timeline is approaching a critical failure point. In October 2017, a man named Bryant Johnson walked into a police station in Casper, Wyoming, with a story so specific and disturbing that major news outlets, including Newsweek, Fox News, ABC, and The Independent, all reported on the incident. Johnson claimed to be from the year 2048, sent back in time to warn humanity about an alien invasion that would begin in 2018. According to the official police report, Johnson was heavily intoxicated, but spoke with remarkable calm and conviction about his mission. He insisted that he had not travelled voluntarily, but had been thrown into 2017 by a time travel experiment that suffered a miscalibration, causing him to arrive 1 year earlier than intended. His mission was to warn authorities about extraterrestrial visitors who would appear peaceful at first before gradually taking control of human civilization piece by piece. Johnson revealed that time travel technology would become possible starting in 2028, initially developed by the US government and later perfected with assistance from alien advisors. He emphasized that the coming invasion could not be stopped, only understood and prepared for. When asked how he had traveled through time, he simply replied that the process was extremely complicated and that not all travelers survived the transition. What makes this case particularly compelling is Johnson's apparent knowledge of future technological developments and his precise timeline for when time travel would become operationally feasible. His description of alien intervention in human time travel research suggests that our species will eventually develop this technology only with the help of the same extraterrestrial forces that plan to use it against us. The most disturbing aspect of Johnson's testimony is the implication that he came from an alternative timeline where the alien invasion he predicted had already occurred. In physics, parallel timelines can be created when major events alter the course of history, resulting in multiple versions of reality that develop independently. Johnson may not have traveled from our future, but from a parallel version where humanity had already fallen under alien control. This would explain why the invasion he predicted for 2018 hasn't occurred in our timeline yet. But the key word is yet. If Johnson's warnings were accurate, then the threat may simply be delayed rather than eliminated. His arrival 1 year early could have been enough to alter our timeline, just enough to postpone the invasion while leaving the fundamental threat intact. This final case proves that our future isn't just doomed by human manipulation of time travel technology. It's doomed by the intervention of non-human intelligences who view our species as a resource to be harvested rather than a civilization to be respected. We're approaching a convergence point where multiple forms of temporal manipulation, government experimentation, alien intervention, and timeline instability will combine to create a perfect storm of catastrophic change that will end human independence forever. Every case we've examined points to the same terrifying conclusion. Our timeline has been compromised from multiple directions by forces that operate outside our understanding of space, time, and reality itself. Random temporal anomalies are evidence that the fabric of time has been damaged beyond repair. Government time travel programs have destabilized our reality through reckless experimentation with forces they cannot control. Future humans view our era as nothing more than a primitive phase worthy of scientific observation and manipulation. Ancient evidence proves that this manipulation has been ongoing for thousands of years, guiding human development according to purposes we cannot comprehend. Environmental catastrophe awaits us in timelines where humanity survives only through desperate adaptation to a world rendered uninhabitable by our own actions. Political events have been shaped by information from the future, making democracy and national sovereignty meaningless illusions. And now we face the ultimate threat: alien intelligences who plan to use our own time travel technology against us, transforming humanity into a controlled resource in a cosmic hierarchy we never chose to join. These aren't separate problems. They're symptoms of a timeline that has been pushed beyond its natural limits by forces that care nothing for human autonomy, dignity, or survival. The future isn't uncertain. It's been written, rewritten, and edited so many times that the original course of human development has been completely erased. We're not evolving toward a better tomorrow. We're being guided toward a predetermined endpoint that serves interests we cannot understand and will never be allowed to influence. The evidence is overwhelming, the pattern is clear, and the conclusion is inescapable. Our future isn't just doomed. It was doomed the moment we became subjects in experiments conducted by beings who view time itself as a tool for control, rather than a natural progression toward human potential. The question isn't whether we can change this outcome. The question is whether we're already too late to realize that our choices were never really ours to begin with. The web of temporal manipulation we've uncovered reveals a pattern so systematic and comprehensive that it can only lead to one conclusion. Every thread of evidence points toward a future where human consciousness itself becomes the ultimate target of forces that have been orchestrating our development for millennia. What we've discovered isn't just time travel. It's the systematic harvesting of human potential across multiple timelines, with our species serving as unwitting participants in an experiment designed to transform us into something we would never choose to become. These cases prove that our timeline isn't just unstable, it's been deliberately destabilized to create the exact conditions necessary for this transformation. The random temporal anomalies, the government experiments, the future interventions, the ancient manipulations, they're all components of a larger system designed to push human consciousness toward a specific endpoint where individual identity becomes obsolete and collective consciousness becomes mandatory. The most terrifying realization is that this process is already well underway. Every technological advancement that connects us more deeply to digital networks, every surrender of privacy in exchange for convenience, every algorithm that makes decisions on our behalf is moving us closer to the moment when human consciousness becomes fully integrated into the collective matrix these time travelers have described. We're not witnessing random incidents of time travel. We're documenting the systematic preparation of our species for assimilation into a consciousness network that spans multiple timelines and dimensions. The beings manipulating our development aren't trying to destroy us. They're trying to transform us into components of a vast computational system that uses human awareness as processing power for objectives we'll never be allowed to understand. The future these travelers describe isn't one of human extinction. It's one of human obsolescence, where our consciousness survives, but our humanity dies. We become eternal prisoners in our own minds, aware but powerless, conscious but controlled, alive but no longer truly living. This is the doom that awaits us, not destruction, but the complete elimination of everything that makes us human, while keeping our consciousness intact to serve purposes beyond our comprehension. The manipulation has been so thorough and so subtle that most of humanity remains completely unaware that our choices, our thoughts, and our future have been predetermined by forces operating outside the normal flow of time. We think we're evolving naturally toward a technological future, but we're actually being guided toward a predetermined transformation that will end human independence forever. The evidence is undeniable, the pattern is complete, and the outcome is inevitable unless we somehow find a way to break free from a manipulation system that operates across thousands of years and multiple dimensions of reality. But perhaps the most disturbing truth is that it may already be too late. Perhaps we're already living in the final phase of this transformation, mistaking our gradual surrender of autonomy for progress, while the architects of our doom prepare to complete their millennia-long project of consciousness harvesting. Our future isn't just doomed. It's been carefully engineered to appear like salvation, while delivering us directly into a prison we'll never escape, where human consciousness becomes the ultimate renewable resource in a cosmic economy we never agreed to join. The evidence is overwhelming, and the verdict is final. These 10 cases don't just suggest that time travel exists. They prove that our entire timeline has been compromised by forces operating on a scale we can barely comprehend. From random teenagers disappearing into temporal vortexes to government agents lost in the past, from future researchers studying us like laboratory specimens to ancient beings manipulating our development for thousands of years, the pattern is undeniable. We're not living in the natural progression of human history. We're trapped inside a carefully orchestrated experiment designed to transform our species into something that serves purposes we'll never understand. Every case reveals another layer of manipulation, another level of control, another step toward a future where human consciousness becomes nothing more than processing power for entities that view our autonomy as an obstacle to be eliminated. the most chilling realization is that this isn't happening to us. It's already happened. The timeline manipulation, the consciousness harvesting, the systematic destruction of human independence, it's all been set in motion by forces that operate outside linear time. Our choices aren't our own. Our future isn't uncertain. It's been written, edited, and finalized by beings who decided long ago what humanity would become. These time travelers didn't come back to warn us because they wanted to help. They came back because they're part of the system designed to prepare us for assimilation. Every warning is actually conditioning. Every revelation is actually programming. Every piece of evidence is actually proof that our doom isn't approaching. It's already here, and we've been living inside it our entire lives without ever realizing that our reality is nothing more than the final phase of an experiment that began thousands of years ago and will end with the complete transformation of human consciousness into something we would never choose to become. The future isn't doomed. We are. And the most terrifying part is that by the time we realize it, we'll no longer be human enough to care.